Supply Chain Brain Executive Briefing was recorded at the SCM Annual Conference in Chicago, Illinois. I'm pleased to welcome Senior Editor of Supply Chain Brain, Bob Bowman.
I'm joined today by Dr. Douglas M. Lambert, Director of the Global Supply Chain Forum at Ohio State University. Hi, Doug.
Hello.
Why don't you give us your definition of supply chain management?
Well, I think before we define supply chain management, we ought to ask what it is. And in our view, the supply chain is the network of companies that comprises the suppliers to your company, their suppliers if they exist, customers of your company, and their customers if they exist. Now again, it depends on where you are in the supply chain, it'll look different. If I'm Walmart, the consumers are right up next to me, so I've only got suppliers. Now, if we can agree then that the supply chain is a network of companies, then I think if we want to manage that network of companies, we can't do it with fewer functions than it takes to manage one company. Logically, that makes no sense. So in our view, supply chain management is how you manage this network of companies that you are part of in a supply chain. And managing it involves 8 cross-functional business processes.
Why is there so much confusion about the terminology with regard to supply chain management today?
I don't know. It's a frustration to me. I think, well, I sat and listened to a Legends panel at the Educators Conference, Don Bowersox, John Coyle, and Bud Lalonde.
That's here at the CSCMP conference in Chicago.
And the only one who seemed to get it was Don Bowersox, that he thinks there needs to be an organization that takes care of logisticians, that we've somehow made a big mistake by thinking that the new name for logistics is supply chain management. The most holistic view of supply chain management, other than our own, is that it's some combination of purchasing and operations and logistics. But when you think about that, who would try to manage one company with only purchasing, operations, and logistics functions? I mean, with no marketing, with no sales, with no R&D, with no finance, with no accounting. So if we're going to manage a network of companies, how do we manage it with fewer functions than it takes to manage one company? And again, I think the answer is we can't. And if you think about complex relationships in the supply chain, like Coke and Cargill, for example, they have CEO to CEO involvement. There's so much business at stake. They're doing R&D, joint R&D on a new sweetener that Coke has exclusive rights for all beverage items, and Cargill has exclusive rights for all non-beverage food items. Sure, they've got logistics people working together, trying to better route transportation to reduce the carbon footprint, but this is way more than logistics. It's way more than a combination of purchasing and operations and logistics.
So if you were to sum up what are the things that get left out in many people's definition of supply chain management, again, could you mention some of those disciplines?
Well, in our view, the supply chain, again, is a network of companies, and the links in the supply chain are the selling firm's customer relationship management process, linking up with the buying firm's supplier relationship management process. And if you think about, again, this supply chain for a company in the middle of the supply chain, like a 3M, like a Colgate, it looks less like a chain than it looks like an uprooted tree. If you pull a tree out of the ground, shake the dirt off the roots, the root system is the supply network, branches on the tree, the customer network. Just as some of those roots are more important to the success of the tree, some suppliers and their suppliers are more important to the success of your supply chain. And same kind of thing with branches on the tree, customers. So Walmart's going to be more important to my success than some smaller company. Coke, you may not know this, is the largest purchaser of PET plastic resins in the world. They buy plastic containers from big companies like Graham Packaging, but they decided that they wanted to negotiate directly with the supplier of the resin because the big cost of conversion to that plastic bottle is not the conversion cost, it's the resin. So by contracting directly with the resin manufacturer, 3 things happen. You get availability, assured availability because you've taken control. You get the best price, and you get volatility out of the price.
Now, I often hear it said that competition today is no longer between companies, it's between supply chains. What's your view on that?
Well, I understand what people are trying to say. They're trying to say that no company is good enough to do it alone. But technically, it's incorrect. The only way it could be supply chain against supply chain is if I wouldn't buy from anyone who sold to a competitor, and I wouldn't sell to anyone who was a competitor of an existing customer. Then you could play the A team against the B team. But that doesn't even happen in supply chains like McDonald's, where they do have dedicated players like Martin Brower's a dedicated distributor. But you've probably noticed you can buy a Coke in McDonald's, and you've probably also noticed you can buy it in a Wendy's and many other places. You can buy it in Kroger and take it home. So the point is, if you look at 3 supply chains of comparable products like Colgate, Procter, and Unilever, okay? A high percentage of the time, maybe it's 8 times out of 10, maybe it's 9 times out of 10, they're buying from exactly the same suppliers, right? And they're selling to the same customers. So how can it be supply chain against supply chain if I buy from the same guys you buy from and I sell to the same customers you sell to? In our view, supply chain management for this reason is all about relationship management. If Procter & Gamble manages relationships better than Colgate and Unilever, they win more often.